Hey, what's going on, everybody? Want to jump on here for day 3 of Prison Stories, more of the light-hearted, fun, easygoing stories that I like to tell about my experience while working inside the walls. So, this was inspired by National Correctional Employees Week, which is going on the duration of this week. So, to all of you who are currently working inside a facility or support staff to a facility, I just want to take a moment and say thank you so much for what you do. We honor you. We appreciate your sacrifice, your willingness to show up 365 days a year, 24/7, holidays, birthdays, mandatory overtimes, whatever the case may be, rain or shine, sleet or snow, you are there. Thank you so much for what you do. So today's story is going to be a little bit different. So when I was working at the penitentiary, when I first got there, I was working in one of the big blocks. When I was working in the blocks, you on average, because it's a 5-story housing unit that houses, I think, 560 inmates per block, if my mind serves me correctly. And you have to walk every 40 minutes. The key is, though, even though you have to walk every 40 minutes, all 5 tiers, all the way up and all the way down, there cannot be any more than 30 minutes in between your tier checks. So, 40 minutes in between your tier checks. So it takes you about 10 minutes to walk. So that means essentially about every 30 minutes, you're walking for 10 minutes. So working on graveyard, you get to see a lot of dudes sleeping. And in the wintertime, it sucks because you're cold, because that place the heat doesn't really work very well. It either works really good and it's like a sweatbox sauna, or it's freezing cold. Either way, it doesn't work. It's one way or the other. Summertime, it's burning hot. There's no air conditioning. Place was built in the 1800s, so it's just like super old school. So anyways, the block that I worked in the most, I got down to a routine. And you, on average, without any extenuating circumstances or having to do anything, extra checks or anything, you walk 5 to 6 miles a night. We got these little pedometers as part of this health and wellness thing, and it was shocking the difference between swing shift and graveyard pedometer steps. And it was also shocking the difference between like the staff that worked inside the blocks on swing shift and maybe like yard staff. Yard staff would have a lot higher step ratio, obviously, because they're walking over a massive recreation yard. But your graveyard officers would have a lot more steps. Like I said, they're in that 5 to 6 mile a night routine. So I had my routine, my pattern set up. I would get there, I would get all checked in, I'd get all settled in, and I would start my walks, and I would go through and kind of got in the grind and the mundane. And if you know me, I'm always trying to figure out a way to standardize everything, so I do the same thing every single night. So I set up the same routine, the same patterns, the same habits, so that way my night just goes smoother. And this is a lot of what I learned from, we'll call him Sergeant Smith, but the individual I talked about last night. And for those of you who know Sergeant Smith, this will be a good dead giveaway of who he is. For years, he walked around and tied a string. He had a shoelace, super long boot lace. He would tie it all the way up and then untie it all the way down, all the way up, all the way down. And he would literally pace and tie that boot string. Funniest thing, Christmas one year, side note, I got him a length of 550 paracord, wrapped it up, brought it into him, and gave it to him. And this is how cool this guy is. This is me trying to like mess with him at first, and he pauses and he's like, "Thank you," and he like genuinely appreciated it. And I didn't intend it to be that way, but then I was like, like honestly, I genuinely do appreciate him. And the cool thing about that is years later, I asked him about that string. I had promoted up to like lieutenant. It was like probably 5 or 6 years later. He still had that same string in his office that he had kept. So, I mean, that guy was an awesome dude. Anyways, back to my graveyard story. So I would walk, and I would walk. And you know what? It sucks when you're tired, when you don't feel good. It's late at night. You're hearing all these dudes snoring. You're hearing all these dudes sawing logs, man, and just out cold, you know, and you see them snuggled up in their blankets. And yes, hardcore convicts snuggle up in blankets just like you and me do. But you would see them snuggled up, and I remember walking down the tier, just getting to the point where I hated seeing people sleeping. It just annoyed me. And it wasn't anything they were doing, obviously. It was the fact that I was up and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was still having to be awake, full well knowing I was probably going to get 2 or 3 hours of sleep the next day. So, what did I start doing to take my mind and occupy my mind? Well, I'm a very physically active person. I started doing push-ups. So, I would walk down a tier, and when I got down to the end of the tier, I would take a towel on each tier and lay it out on the landing on the floor, and I would do push-ups. So I'd sit there, do a certain amount of push-ups, and I think I started at like 5 push-ups per tier, 5 tiers, right? You're doing 25 push-ups. And you do that every 40 minutes. That right there started my journey to physical fitness, because you might feel like you're trapped on graveyard, not being able to be mobile, not being able to move around or do things, not being able to interact with people. To some extent, in a lot of ways, yes, that's true. But it doesn't have to stop your ability to take care of yourself. Because what I found is the more push-ups I did, the better I felt, the more awake I felt, the less angry I felt, because I was physically exerting myself on top of doing all the walking, but I was physically doing something, and then it became a game on my mind. I started trying to see how many I could do each tier. Okay, cool, I did 15 this tier. Now I'm gonna go down to the next tier, see how many more I can do. And I would start counting, and I would just constantly do that, back and forth, constantly do that. And then I switched to squats and doing air squats, and then, I do air squats and push-ups together. But I started to notice that when I was engaging in those physical exercises, especially on graveyard, my entire mentality would change as to how I would treat the night. On the times where I wasn't working with my normal crew of friends that really ended up turning into like family, brotherhood, just amazing people to work with, I would exert myself into physical exercise. And you know what? It wasn't like I was out there, deadlifting weights or, doing curls or whatever, but I was doing something. And I noticed I had a physiological change where I started feeling better. I started feeling better on graveyard. I wasn't so tired. I wasn't so angry. I wasn't so irritable. And I got to the point where I was kind of really just happy, just kind of, cool. And I was kind of spasmodic, and it was a noticeable shift in myself that people on the outside started seeing. And I kind of carried that throughout my corrections career. So my story today, it's not really funny, but it's maybe a word of encouragement to those of you that are in the industry today, because a lot of times you're not necessarily very mobile. There's a lot of posts or positions that you work where you're not really able to have access to move around a whole lot, so you sit a lot. And that sitting can lead to overeating, can lead to gaining weight, can lead to losing muscle mass if you're not if you're not counterbalancing that. Sucking at words tonight. But if you can't counterbalance that, it leads to all of those things. So with that being said, my encouragement to you for National Correctional Employees Week, take time. I started doing pull-ups on the tower when I was working special housing. I just do pull-ups and I do chin-ups, and I would do back and forth. And then at one point we ended up getting a pull-up dip bar and a leg raise bar put in for the staff, which was pretty cool. But get creative, get moving, get exercising, because if you just spend all of your time sitting around drinking coffee, shooting the shit with your friends, there's nothing wrong with doing that for a certain amount of time, but eventually I noticed, at least for myself, eventually that road would go negative. Eventually that road would turn to a bad spot. And then mentally I'm just pissed off because I'm working graveyard, or I'm working a crappy assignment. Maybe I'm working a suicide watch, or maybe I'm, watching inmates paint walls, whatever. Maybe I'm just not enjoying my time, and, just going and talking to people, that's just going to feed into that and make it worse. And it's not good for my mental health. It's not good for my physical health. So when I say get up, move, get motivated, do something. Do some push-ups. Do some wall push-ups. Do some crunches. Do some calf extensions. There's tons of calisthenics you can do to just move your body. Because when your body starts moving, you start feeling better. Your blood starts flowing. You breathe more oxygen in, which fills your brain, which helps you think better. And it's really hard to complain about a policy a manager wrote, or a new tactic you're going to implement, or the fact that the coworker or the shift before, made a mess in the coffee break room or whatever. It's hard to talk about those things if you're doing all those things, physically engaging, you're breathing lots of oxygen, like you're moving, you're getting motivated. It's really hard to be upset about those things and to dwell on those things if you're forcing your mind into something else. So that was my trick when I worked a lot of graveyard, and I did work a lot of graveyard. And for those of you who worked on graveyard with me, you can attest to the fact that, man, we would do push-up challenges, we would do sit-up challenges, we would do pull-up challenges, we would, do whatever. Like we would try to do things to inspire teams, inspire movement, and get moving. So that power and control of starting that can be done by anybody. It doesn't have to start from your supervisor. It doesn't have to be, a group of people. Just one person can do it. And what I've, again, found is it becomes contagious to where people join in. And if they don't want to join in, whatever, that's their thing. But I've also seen it change entire shifts to where an entire shift of 10, 15 people are excited, and they have a common goal and a purpose, and they're engaged. And you know what, working a crappy shift or working a crappy post is less crappy because they're engaged and they're doing something with the team and they're able to interact. So that would just be my encouragement to you guys today, for those of you that are working here inside the institution, inside the walls. Once again, if you know somebody who is in the corrections industry, take a moment to thank them. This is probably one of the least thanked jobs that I've ever seen in my life. We appreciate what you do. We appreciate what you guys sacrifice every single day. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, guys. You're going to work hard for your retirement. You're going to work hard throughout your career. You don't want to have to deal with a bunch of health issues because you're overweight, because you're obese, because you are so stressed all the time that you build up plaque in your heart and you have a heart attack. Like don't do that. Enjoy your retirement. Like, live a healthy lifestyle, so that way when you retire after 30 years, 35 years, 40 years, whatever it is, when you retire, you can actually enjoy all of that money that you built up in your retirement because you earn it every day. So thank you guys for what you do. I hope you guys are getting anything out of this. Please, please, please comment, like, and subscribe if you're getting anything out of this, and share it with anybody you know that would benefit from it. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. God bless you.